What we're doing here is I am setting up the drawing guide, setting it to perspective, and I put a little dot a little above the middle and a little to the right of the middle. That way we're not looking head on into our vanishing point, but we have a slight angle to it. And then what I want to do is construct basically a guide for what it is that I am going to be painting. And in this case, I'm going to be painting a wall with a shelf on it and put a potted plant on that. So I want my shelf to be about that deep and about that wide. Let's get rid of the extra lines. And it doesn't have to be absolutely perfect, because what I'm going to do is use my colors and draw over the top of this on other layers. But I want a nice guide to go by. So here I'm doing the base wall. And then I want to go up a layer to create the slabs that I'm going to put on the wall. And that way I can go back down to layer 1 and get rid of all the stuff that got overlapped. The slab needs to, of course, go beyond the edge of the base wall so that it looks like it has a nice lip. Using the drawing assist with this makes life so much easier. And then I want to match this on the other side, so let's create another layer to use as a guide for the guide. We turn the opacity down, and I'm making extension lines here. That way I'll know what to do when I get to the left-hand side. The more of these you put on, the easier it is to get things absolutely correct. I really should have put an extra line for the thickness of the slab at the top, but I didn't. And you'll see me make an interesting mistake here. I create my line going from the wrong place, and so they don't match up. The thickness that you see back there is only for the back of this slab, not for the front. I didn't do this thickness for the front, so I have to undo this, and I will just use the back line there to get my thickness. And then we come forward and match them there. Now it's the correct thickness. And we can extend the lines all the way over here to the left. And now we're going to create the shelf slab. We're making it approximately the same thickness as the top slab. And I'm using my eyes, just kind of eyeball how far back we want it to go so it looks like it's stuck out the same length front and back. And then we can match these lines up and get rid of the extras. Basically, this doesn't have to be perfect because I'm only going to use it as a guide whenever I get to the actual picture itself. I'm going to use these side pieces as they are to create the slabs that are the side of the niche. And right here I'm just getting rid of all the stuff from layer 1 that gets covered by layer 2. And as I'm getting rid of this part, I notice that, well, I've got some of the layer 2 that is inside this little box that I created. So we'll finish up here with layer 1, and then we'll erase those extra 2 lines on layer 2. I could leave them, because after all, they're only going to be there as a guide, but so as not to confuse myself, I'm going to go ahead and get rid of them. And then towards the end of this section, someone was at the door. It was my food delivery. So I stopped the video, got my food, we ate, and then I came back and started the recording again. Unfortunately, my iPad does not like long recordings, so that failed. So instead of recording from here, I'm going to show you a time lapse of the rest of this process. And here we go. So there's the time lapse of me creating the guide that I'm going to be using. And that's my side slabs. And now I'm drawing in using this terracotta color. I'm using several layers, so whenever I go back to color them, I can use the clipping mask. We put the sky in, put a gradient over that, and now I'm going over and I'm coloring. I turn off the layers that I'm not coloring or have colored, so I can tell where it is I need to color. We'll do a cast shadow from the shelf here. And And when I did this time lapse, I made a potted plant in here, but I wasn't concerned with how the time lapse would look because I knew I had it on video. Unfortunately, that means that the potted plant just popped up real quickly. So we're going to switch over and I'm going to redo the potted plants. Here I'm fixing my sky gradient. I think that it's too stormy, so I'm trying the different blend modes. You can see how you can change the mood of your picture just by changing the blend mode here. And I'm deciding here, it looks like soft light and pin light are good choices. So I switch back and forth between them and finally decide on soft light. Now this is my variable width brush, which I have the opacity set down on, so it kind of does this. Rather than deal with it right now, I'm just going to go ahead and switch over to my monoline brush. It works just as well. And I'm creating the top of the pot here. And I want it lighter, so I've turned off the multiply layers so that I can color pick this lighter color. Then we can turn those layers back on. And that doesn't look good. I want soil in here, so we undo it. I'm going to first finish the top of our pot. And I don't like that, so I decide that I'm just going to use an arc because it's smoother. And then we'll put the bottom in, and it has to be a closed shape. So you're going to see me create the top of it, even though it butts up against the top of the pot here. And I'm not going to use snapping lines because I want this to look more like a hand-thrown and fired pot, something a little more rustic. And here I'm adjusting it at the top and the bottom so that you can see that lip a little bit better and so that the bottom is more centered. And then I will use a variety of different colors to create the soil and blur them out a bit. Most of this is going to be covered by the ivy anyway, so you can probably skip this step if you want. We're going to put a multiply layer on top. And color that in using the watercolor brush. Just to kind of darken it a little bit here. And then we'll put a shadow on the bottom. We're using clipping mask and a multiply layer. Most of the shadow you're not going to see. And I also decide during this process, putting the shadow on, that I can skip the shadow on the slab because I'm going to cover that with ivy anyway. And here we're going to do our ivy. But I'm going to set the spacing to 40, so it's a little bit further apart. And we'll give it a little bit of size here. And trail vines around. We'll have them going up on top of the wall. And then going over that lip and down. And on the top of the wall here. Down the side of the pot. Filling the crevice here and going up. Creeping down over the shelf and down the wall here. And this is where the shadow for the pot would have been. But as I said, I didn't really feel like I needed it. And we're just putting this vine climbing all over the wall here. And then I want to give it some subtle variations in color. So I'm going to start putting some lighter green on top of this darker green. Just to sort of build it up, give it a little bit more bulk and dimension. And as you can see, putting the lighter colors on top of the darker colors just kind of gives it more of a three-dimensional effect. And now I'm going to put some flowers on. We turn the ivy all the way down to the bottom. And we're just tapping either 3, 5, or 7 times to create these flowers. But they're looking a little dull. I'm thinking that there's too much darkening and too much variety here for the hue. So let's go into the brush. We're going to duplicate it. And under the color options, I'm going to turn the saturation down and test that real quick. And then go in. And instead of darken, we're going to say lighten, so that we can get brighter colors on here. And that allows us to get nice bright flowers. We'll go over the ones that we've already done as well. Now we'll go for a blue color. I figure a light blue given the color burn layers that we have there. And yeah, that turns out very nice. And then we'll go for a red. And I'm going to create a pink. And I'm putting all of this on one layer so I can create a good shadow layer. We duplicate the layer, we alpha lock it, and then we choose a nice gray color and fill, and then we set this to multiply. Now let's nudge it down and to the right a bit. We want it kind of far away because we don't want it to look like the leaves are just pasted on there. But shadows don't happen in the middle of the air, so we're getting rid of those. Brush is a little bit too big for that little corner. So we're going to reduce the size of the brush and then clean it up. And that looks better. And then we can start cleaning up here. Of course, you don't have to use a small brush to clean up at the top. So we're going to increase that and just swipe across there. And we zoom out to take a look. And down here at this bottom right corner in the niche, we've got some shadow. So let's make the brush smaller and get rid of that. And we're happy with that, so we're going to sign it using the paper brush with transparency so we can see a little bit behind. We'll use a dark color, of course. And check in the description of this demo video for the tutorial on how to make the stone wall. It's a very nice brush. I kind of like it. And I hope you enjoyed this and that you have a wonderful day.